So today we are going to be learning about a concept called universal theme. Can you tell me what it's called, please? Universal theme. All right, so I want you to think about what those words mean. First of all, let's think about the word universal. Universal.
Universal themes are concepts that are found across many different varieties of literature. So you'll see them in narrative texts from all cultures. You'll see them in myths, fables, fairy tales, novels, short stories. It's a series of concepts that just arise repeatedly throughout history in all human literature, all human storytelling. At the beginning of the year, I give them a general overview. So typically I'll create a poster with them that has just a list with the basic ideas of what constitutes each one of the themes.
What is an example of a conflict a human could have with nature? Nature and humans are opposing forces. What is an example of a conflict between humans and nature?
A conflict between humans and nature is in 2017 when all the hurricanes were happening, people were struggling to get out of the floods.
Absolutely, that is humans against nature. So that's an example of a conflict called man versus nature. Humans were attempting to escape from floods and various different hurricanes. Somebody give me an answer of what is an example of nature versus nature, a conflict within nature itself. Gio?
What I think nature on nature should be when they conflict is if people bring like an invasive species and it starts attacking native birds or other animals there.
Okay, so they're both competing. They're going against each other. I concur. All right, so let's think about conflict.
The introduction is just to give them an overview. They take notes that match my poster. Those are always available. And then I keep that poster available to them on the wall throughout the year so they can see it and refer to it. And often they do say, oh, this really reminds me of order versus chaos, even if we've not yet focused on that, just based on their initial introduction to the concept. Let's wake up our brains, please. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey.
Okay, so now we're going to start off, we're going to go in a pattern. Just as we identify patterns as a universal theme, we're going to go in a pattern. So we're going to go example, non-example, example, non-example. Make sure you're writing them neatly with your bullet points, please. Again,
at this time, we're actually focusing on change. It's longer than just a 1-week focus, so typically I will take that change and I reintroduce it. We go over the concept in a little more detail. I do several activities where it's like a whole group, a small group, and independent activities. Sometimes they do partner activities. And that really refreshes their mind and gives them a deeper understanding. Are you thinking of an example of change? Oops, starting to see some thumbs, some hands on heads showing me that we're ready. Looking for an example of change. Okay, Tamara, what is an example of change?
An example of change is when you're short but you can grow taller over time.
Thumbs up if you concur. You're short and you might grow taller over time. I agree completely. That is an example of change. Now I'm looking for a non-example of change. Be prepared to share your non-example of change. A non-example of change. When you're ready, I can see a hand on head, a hand in the air, or a thumb. Any is a way to tell me that you're ready. All right, Allison, what is a non-example of change?
A non-example of change is when you don't read and don't get your level upgrade of reading, so you won't get smarter.
Thumbs up if you concur. Not doing your reading, maybe during class or maybe at home, your level doesn't change. It just remains static from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, so you're not getting any smarter or getting any better at reading skills. Looks like they agree. I agree, that is a non-example. Okay,
I chose the Junior Scholastic magazine for the example and non-examples that they created because it's full of current events. And these kids they're interested and they're excited in what's happening in our world right now. If they can relate experiences in the world to change, then they can start to see how that might apply to their own life.
So today we're actually going to take it a little bit further. You've been reading about current events in your different current events magazines, and our goal today is to look at current events through the lens of change. How do things change and how do things stay the same and become a non-example of change. So today we're going to, as small groups, create posters using cutouts from our magazines to show examples of change and non-examples of change.
I have them work together because it's really important that they can communicate and hear something other than just parroting my speech.
There's also another one. It says right here, for example, tests that found out that vapor users inhale some e-cigarettes contains cancer-causing substances and toxic But did it have it before? No, it always has it. But we can use that as a non-example as change.
Teaching universal themes helps students make connections in just about everything. I've actually been really shocked and pleasantly surprised to see kids are making connections that I don't even see until they point them out. I can't tell you how many times during the day students will say to me, "Oh, wow, that's a conflict." Even if conflict is not our focus, it's still there and in their minds, and it's happening at all times. They are amazing at pulling out connections and pieces of information and, oh, this ties to that. And then they can start making those connections across disciplines as well.
We have a graph showing on how big different kinds of statues are, and the tallest statue, the State of Unity, is the tallest statue, and it has took animals' habitats away. The statue took 400 million from the public, and that leaves 20% of the population earning less than $2 a day.
Wow, that is quite an impact. So they took $400 million of public money, and now the people are earning less than $2 a day. They don't have the resources that they need. Okay, so show me thumbs up. You think they met their objective. So today we are going to work on an independent project. How is this project going to be done? Independent. I just want to show you the expectation of what's on the inside. So when you look on the inside, on the left-hand page, I wrote example of change. What did I put? Example of change. Okay, so I cited a page on page 8, and then I described it in my own words. I paraphrased what happens in the story. Janie has always believed that her parents are upstanding American citizens. So next you have to come up with a symbol. Now this is not a full illustration. Up here I drew the whole scene. Here I drew just a symbol, and I drew a stack of pancakes with some syrup. That's my symbol. To me, a stack of pancakes with some syrup symbolizes the change. Janie changed in that she used to believe that her parents were upstanding citizens. So when I ask you to look for change, I'm not asking you to say, oh, they changed their clothes, unless it directly affects the entire rest of the novel or the entire rest of the scene. It needs to be a serious change, not a surface change. At the very beginning of the year, I actually sit down and do sort of a long-term plan. I decide what novels are the best for which of the universal themes. I don't choose to do all 10 every year. Again, I introduce them and then I choose maybe 2 or 3. I will focus on, say, order versus chaos and change and conflict. I pick a novel that matches each one the most closely, but you can find examples of all of them in every text that you read. What does that mean for her as a person? Let's say that happened to you as a person and you're growing up. What kind of changes would you make in your life because of that?
I would be way more mature, or quick thinking.
Aha! That's the
Universal
change that was
themes
made.
offer the opportunity for scholars to really engage in critical thinking. There absolutely could be a surface understanding of these things. And at the outset of the year, that's really my goal, is to get them to understand the academic vocabulary and to have a surface or basic understanding. That said, the natural evolution, if you continue as an educator to reintroduce, to mention, to bring it up pretty regularly, it can slowly become deeper and deeper and deeper. You should even notice within your year, you reintroduce at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, they're really engaging in critical thinking by applying those in a very deep way.
Okay, so now provide an explanation. Well, how is that an example of change?
This is an example of change because long ago vapes didn't have flavors, but now they do, and children's limbic systems are getting addicted to vape flavors.
Oh, did you notice what they did right there? Oh, they mentioned the limbic system, didn't they? So why would they mention the limbic system? Did that happen in the article? Why would they mention that?